So if you could give one message to your younger self, stepping into the ring 25 years ago, what message would it be?
I mean, the biggest message to my younger self would be don't stress about this stuff and enjoy the physical act of wrestling, because what we do is incredible and it's so unique, and you're not always going to have it. You know, after I was forced to retire in 2015, and since I came back, I've been able to be very much be able to enjoy all the moments. But before that, it was almost like there's like a stress that you want to perform at this level or whatever it is, and maybe that's what drives you or what makes you better or whatever it is. But yeah, really that message of enjoy this.
And what's the biggest thing you've learned would you say, throughout your career? Is it similar or something?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I've really learned is things aren't under your control, right? Like letting go of control and letting go of some of the desires, you know what I mean, as far as like I need things to be this way, or I need things to be this, like my idea of how something should go, it doesn't need to go that way for it to still be great, or for you to still enjoy it, or for it to actually even be better for your life.
So talking of things to let go, is there one match that you wish you'd had that you've never had?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the one that I've always wanted is Shawn Michaels, because he helped train me, right? And there was a brief period of time in 2013, 2014 where I thought I was going to get it, and I didn't get it.
So close.
Yeah, so close.
And is there any unfinished business? Nigel McGuinness was saying a lot of things when we interviewed him. Is there any unfinished business out there? Is Nigel one of them?
So I don't have unfinished business with Nigel. Nigel has unfinished business with me, right? And so, you know, and I think that's one of the really interesting story, is this idea of I've moved past him, but he's held on to this thing because his career ended up being shorter than mine, right? And so, but that's interesting from a pro wrestling storytelling standpoint. But yeah, I don't have any unfinished business. I try to limit that in my own mental space, as far as it doesn't serve me.
No, fair enough. How do you plan on, you've talked about this being your last full wrestling year, how do you plan on spending your time, maybe as well as in wrestling? You've talked about maybe working backstage, but in your personal life as well, with all this extra time?
Yeah, so it's helping out with my community. It's being a more active participant in my kid's life. I've always tried to be a very present father, right? But for example, like being able to coach the sporting teams that my kids are on, you know, that sort of thing. Like, you know, and that's how I want to spend my days. And also, how can I help my community, right? You know, I know people focus on politics at a national level a lot of times, and that's important too. But I think it's really important to participate where you're at locally, because I think that's where you can make the most change.
So could we see Mayor?
No. I never want to run for office. Are you kidding me? That sounds horrible.
Okay, just checking. When you look back at your career, how would you summarize it? If you had to kind of encapsulate your career, how would you summarize it?
I can't. So it's really interesting, because there's just these moments that I won't understand ever, right? Like, even when I look back at them, I don't understand how they happened or why they happened or whatever, these incredible moments. Because although I know that I'm very good at this, a lot of chance things had to happen for me to be in the position that I'm in now. And so it's like, how did that happen? How these things are mysteriously interconnected, and I don't know, but that's life, kind of, right? How did the human species even evolve? We're in this, you know, the Carl Sagan, the pale blue dot, right? We're just in this pale blue dot on the edge of the universe. That, like, how did this exist? It's wild.
I think about that a lot. And what's the biggest thing you'd say you've learned about yourself through your career? Like, is there something that you now know about, you're in tune with yourself better, maybe?
Well, so I do feel like any endeavor that you go through wholeheartedly, you learn more about yourself, right? And so I've learned a lot about myself, and one of the things that I've really learned is I had all these limiting beliefs about myself of things that I couldn't do when I left high school. Because you have to think in mind, I've been doing this since I was 18. So when I was my last year in high school, I couldn't read a book report in front of my class without like stumbling and eventually like just having to sit down or all that kind of stuff. And now I go out in spandex underwear in front of thousands of people and have no problem like just doing some improv stuff. So there's things, these things that you don't think that you can do, you realize that you can really do anything.
That's amazing. It is amazing what you do. And is this all one big swerve? Because you're going for a career versus title match. Is this all a big swerve? Are we going to see you win the title and then go on another full year of defending it?
Well, so I hope I win the title, right? I hope I win the title. If I win the title, I will keep competing until I lose the title. But I can't imagine that being a year. Just my neck is not good. So it's like I can't even fathom wrestling for another year.
Fair enough. On names, so you've got your name, Daniel Bryan. You wrestled under. It was interesting how that came about and whether there were any other names on the table at any other point.
There sure were. So they asked me to come up with a list. WWE asked me to come up with a list of 10 names, okay, because they don't want it to be your real name. They want to own the rights to it, so for all the merchandising purposes and all that kind of stuff. So I had a list of names. My two favorites were Buddy Peacock and Lloyd Bonnier, which is Lloyd B-O-N with a tilde E-R. And so, but I talked with William Regal's my mentor, and he said, the list that you've come up with is a pretty rotten list of names, but I just envisioned arenas going Bonnier, Bonnier, Bonnier. But he said, why don't you just switch your name around so that people who were fans of you on the independents can follow you and still know, and it's easy to cross-reference, back and forth. I said, okay, I'll put it on the list of 10 names. And that's the one that WWE chose. So it was like, yeah. Can you imagine they didn't want Buddy Peacock or Lloyd Bonnier?
Amazing to me. That would have been.
But I also love the idea of arenas going, Peacock, Peacock, Peacock.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sad they didn't choose. Well, there's still time.
Yeah, there's still time. There's still time.
Was there ever anything in wrestling that you were really uncomfortable with, you were asked to do and you were uncomfortable with, and you said, I'm not doing that?
I'm trying to think. I mean, there have been things that I've said no to. Just in terms of other people mentioning my family or that sort of thing, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, I haven't been asked to do anything that was egregiously oh, I can't believe they asked for this, you know what I mean? Nothing like that's ever happened.
Are there any good ribs that you've played on people or that people have played on you? I remember Davey Richards telling me that you and somebody else had upturned his room maybe on a Noah tour or something.
Oh, I didn't. So I didn't do anything. Well, I didn't do anything like that. Most of my ribs can't be talked about because they're just one. I don't do short term. The old school rib used to be, oh, you pooped in somebody's bag or something like that. I've never done anything like that. Most of my ribs are mental games, right? Mental constructs that I've done, and yeah, most of them aren't appropriate. I'd say, especially in the role that I am now, and it's like, yeah.
Fair enough. You spent 3 weeks in the Wyatt family, or thereabouts.
Mm-hmm.
I was interested in your memories of that time working with Bray Wyatt, that period.
Yeah. So I loved working with Bray, and I worked with him several times. We had a match, after I left the Wyatt family, we had a match at that Royal Rumble that I really enjoyed. But I really enjoyed. I got to wrestle him when he was as the Fiend, and that was a lot of fun. But he's somebody that I just really miss. And there's the time during that, and there was also Brody was involved in that, and I was close with him, and so yeah, it was a fun time, but it was also an uncertain time because it was okay, this crowd was getting super behind me, right? Getting super behind me, and they had turned me into this bad guy. I don't know what their hopes were as far as that goes. But then they turned me into this bad guy, and they're like, oh, we should probably switch him back. And it was just a really weird time in my career where I didn't know what was going on.
Something else, I suppose, on the upsetting side, the impact of Conor Michalik, and whether, I don't know if you're still in touch with the family, or the kind of how that felt at that time and the importance of it to you.
So, it's just crazy because doing the things with him while he was alive felt felt more important than the wrestling, right? It's one of the things that when you look at what you're doing, and his dad, Steve, is just like, what a hero that guy is. But going through that, it makes you realize that some of the things that we focus so much on and we put so many priorities on, those aren't the real important things in life. It was, I think if you were to ask John Cena about it, what's been the most rewarding part of his career, I would imagine, and I don't know this for sure, it wouldn't have been the wrestling. It would be the stuff that he did with the Make-A-Wish kids and that sort of thing. And so, but it's also heartbreaking in the sense of, when I think of like WrestleMania 30, a lot of times people regard that as like this peak moment in my career, like this huge, huge thing. But for me, it's wrapped in all this tragedy as well, right? Like, so it's like, so I main event WrestleMania 30, and that's the last time I see Conor. And I main event WrestleMania 30, I get married that Friday. My wife and I go to Hawaii for the first time on our honeymoon. I'm there, I come back, my dad dies the next day, Conor dies on the Wednesday, and it's just like, it's just triumph wrapped in tragedy. And now when I look back on it, it doesn't even feel like because of the tragedy around it, it almost has a negative emotional content in my mind, right? In my body. So it's like, that kind of stuff. But what it does is it puts priorities it really put priorities on what's important in this life, not just in wrestling.
Yeah, no, for sure. We're talking about kind of life and wrestling. You came back from injury, and a lot of people before that didn't necessarily think that was possible, but then you have Soraya, you have Edge, and Copeland. Do you feel like you kind of set a bar and now that's aspirational? Is that a legacy piece for you, this kind of return from the kind of unimaginable?
So I don't even think in terms of legacy. And the reason why is because, do you know who the most popular wrestler in the world was 50 years ago? No, neither do I, right? So you think 50 years? That's not that long ago, yeah. Right? It's in the 1970s, so it's probably no longer Lou Thez. It's who was the most famous wrestler in the world in the 1970s? A whole decade, yeah. Right? And you don't even know. It's this idea as far as there being legacy. You know what I mean? Only a few people in history will be remembered, and the rest of us just live our lives, right? And so it's like, so I'm not worried about legacy. What I do think is that modern medicine is advancing so rapidly that many people who thought if they have an injury that you think that you can't, or if you have some sort of affliction that you think like, I'm going to be dealing with this my whole life, I'm hoping that a lot of people don't have to deal with it their whole lives. So it's like, if you can be inspiring in that sense of the word, of like, okay, so I saw this person, whether it's me or somebody else in sports or somebody else just in life in general, like they had this thing and they were able to beat it. Like that's inspiring for all of us, right? Like I hear stories like that and I'm inspired. So yeah, I don't think that's part of my legacy particularly. I think it's the legacy of humanity as we improve our ability to heal.
And I saw that you trademarked the yes chant. Is that now yours? Is that something that you're intending to kind of carry with you?
I have no idea. It's so funny how this happened. Was I have a manager who tries to get me things, and he gets me all sorts of things, and I always say no to them because they mostly involve me selling people things, and I don't want to sell people things, right? All of a sudden he texts me on like a Saturday morning or something, and he says, "Hey, yes, is it, whoever had the trademark, and it wasn't WWE, somebody had a trademark for it, and the trademark expired and they didn't re-get it. And he said, "Do you want me to get it?" And I said, "How much does that cost?" And he told me, and it wasn't that much money. I was like, "Oh, sure." Do I have any plans on doing anything with it? I don't know. I don't want to sell anybody anything. You know what I mean? So I'm just like, I have it. If I do want to do something with it, it's there. And if not,
Fair enough. So now you're allowed to use it at Wembley, is that right?
Well, so I don't think you can't trademark like the word yes, right? So it's like, so it's the idea of yes, exclamation point, yes, exclamation point, yes, exclamation point. So if I wanted to do a yes, yes, yes podcast, which I don't want to do, I could in theory do that. Or if I wanted to sell t-shirts, yes, 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 which I don't necessarily want to do, I could do it. But I don't think you can stop anybody from saying yes.
And then lastly, being here at Wembley, now you've seen it, how do you feel about coming out here?
It's incredible. It's incredible. I love seeing arenas before they're filled, right? And stadiums are even cooler than that. But it's hard because you look out at this and I don't think we can show this. But it's like, how's a wrestling ring look in here, right? You know what I mean? And I saw the show from a TV perspective last year, but I wasn't there. I didn't get to see what it looked like live. And their ability to transform these stadiums into all sorts of different things is unbelievable. So it's super cool for me just being here because of the historical significance within wrestling. Like everybody of my generation, like one of the matches that we love the most is Davey Boy Smith versus Bret Hart SummerSlam 92 in Wembley Stadium, right? And so it's like, oh, how is that gonna look? How is that gonna feel? Like, it just gets me excited.